All right, so in this episode, I have a very special guest that we're going to be talking all things operations, strategy, and leadership, and it's going to be a ton of fun. I have Adriana Lane, our head of operations that oversees multiple different companies from service-based, product-based, and lots of different personalities that she manages and oversees and helps them, mentors them, leads them, and helps them get results. So Adriana, super excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks, Cody. Excited to be here.
Before we dive in, would love to, maybe have you share just a little bit about your background and, from the last maybe few roles that you had worked in and now kind of what your day-to-day looks like. It's kind of hard with all the things that you do now, but, a little bit into the day-to-day of the things that you're working on with the Scale with Pros team and our clients, our portfolio companies, and kind of give everyone a overview of what that looks like.
So I started my career in event marketing and campaign management, where I was most of the time project managing the execution of really high impact programs. And over time, I transitioned into more of what I was interested in, which is strategic and operational roles. So focusing on optimization, processes, developing processes, driving efficiency in businesses, and then scaling any initiatives to, sometimes from a local level to a global level. So I've worked for some pretty large-scale companies like Uber, Indeed, even Yelp, from like IPO to full public. And then I've also supported the growth of really small companies, businesses that we're looking to get right off the ground at the very beginning. So working directly with the CEO, and very similar to the ones we work with at Scale with Pros. The reason I bring up the differentiator in my experience between the two is because I think being at both ends of the spectrum gives me a unique perspective and experience when it comes to scaling and how fast you can scale and how large you can scale. On a day-to-day basis at Scale with Pros, I'm supporting our portfolio of businesses on the operational level. So, anything that comes our way with, even when it oversees HR and technology sides of things too. And then the Scale with Pros team is specifically supporting these businesses in getting them off the ground to get more efficient with their team when it comes to communication, leadership, the way they structure their meetings, the way they develop SOPs and trainings. That's all stuff that we work on hands-on with our clients.
Love that. So it's a lot of diverse experience. So this wasn't a question that I was going to ask, but I'm going to ask it now because now I'm just for curiosity's sake. What do you see as like the biggest differences like operationally and strategy between like some of those like really big companies that you'd worked with in the past versus like the smaller businesses that we work in and that, we have here? What do you think are like the things that are really big differences? Or like, I'm just curious, like some of the things that are maybe some similarities versus the differences in those bigger versus smaller. Because I think a lot of people in small business are like, they can't even like understand like what that looks like.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more similarities than you would expect as far as like things can move really fast. You can be really constrained with budgets. No matter how big of a company you are, you still are given like a pretty small amount of money to work with and do something amazing with. But the difference, I think, behind some of the larger scale companies is like their tech stack, for example. They'll purchase anything under the sun in order to make things move faster for a large amount of people. Whereas the businesses we're working with, we're really strategic about what technology or programs or software that they use to get the best results for what they need. And then the amount of people support that you have, in a bigger team, you have somebody that's working on just one thing every day, all day long. Whereas like, in the small businesses, even you and I are doing everything all at once, even if it's not our job, job description.
Yeah. It's like the more scrappy, businesses being smaller versus like, I was at the Dominican event a few weeks ago and there was someone that's like working at a big corporation and he's like, it takes like 3 to 4 months when there's like an idea to then like actually like get approval to like start the idea in some cases. And I'm just like, that it's just so crazy, just like the red tape, and it's like take it to this person and they need to review it, then move it to this person to review, and then to this person to put on their two weeks out agenda to review. It's just like it's crazy. And which it's like, that happens, I guess, at scale. But I mean, for me, it's like it scratches my itch for like variety and like work. Mm-hmm. Like if I had to do the same thing every day, I think I would just go crazy because I don't know. I feel like it'd be kind of boring.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with the red tape. I think that that's a huge like constraint in large businesses for a reason, obviously,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, yeah. Can't just push through
more
everything
people in
all
the
the
control.
time.
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, I agree with you on like doing the same thing every day gets less challenging. And then you also see high turnover in those types of situations, I think, because of that.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. So obviously you support and we work together on, our portfolio companies, and then we work on the different clients' businesses from operational levels. And, I'd love to talk about like what are some of the challenges, and like for those listening, a lot of the businesses we work with are typically doing, call it 500,000 a year, upwards of around 5 million a year is kind of that general range. What would you say like they're, one of the big operational challenges that comes up just kind of over and over again? Would love to kind of talk on that a little bit, and like what will we do to actually help, resolve those issues in the business?
I think the one we hear almost every single new client is I don't know how to get myself out of the business. Meaning,
Mm.
like, I want to work on the business, not in it. I'm doing everything myself. And that can go on both sides. It could be I have a team in place, but I'm still doing their jobs. Or I'm at the point of capacity where I want to hire a team and I don't know where to start. So I think that's our number one thing that we try to solve, and I think our biggest issue that we see in a lot of small businesses is that they just don't know how to get themselves out of that position because they've started it from nothing and they've grown it to the revenue ranges that you've talked about, and now they don't know where to go.
I think there's like part of it's like the mindset thing, and then there's like the strategy to actually like do the things. And just like seeing this growing up, like my dad was always just a solopreneur guy, and he's just like, employees are just going to let you down. And, if you want it done right, you have to do it yourself. That's a really common thing that just still people still believe. And I think, for those that are listening, it's like you have to get out of that mindset of, people are just going to let you down and there aren't good people. There's tons of great people out there in this world. And, it's not something that you have to stay in that reality. It doesn't have to be that way. But from an actual like tactical level, what the heck do people do? So if someone is like, okay, I do acknowledge that I am the problem and I have, contributed to the problem of, maybe it's micromanaging so that team members can't do their best work, or maybe it's they just haven't even considered that could be a possibility for them. Like, what are the steps that someone can take to start moving in that direction, to have, more team members helping support them and going that way?
There's a few steps. So it is kind of complicated to address this challenge. Where we usually start with our clients is giving them a roadmap of what to do first. That's really tailored to their challenges. So as a broad example, I think somebody that's saying, I do everything, I can't get myself out of it, and I do have a team. Okay, so let's start with auditing your activities. What are you working on that is unique to your skill set, your level, that only you have knowledge of, and then what can be delegated, outsourced, stopped, and then looking at the team as well. What kind of activities are they doing? Does it align with their roles that they're in? Are their focuses aligned with your goals for the remainder of the year, where the company's going? All those things we do in our activity framework, and we train them on what to do and how to, do it for their team. But that ultimately gets taken into what we call an accountability chart that comes from EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, where it looks like an org chart, but it defines basically from the conveyor belt of how you bring in your business to how you exit every aspect from marketing, sales, operations, finance, HR. What are the responsibilities that go into your business? And then looking at that like a job description or an org chart. So who's doing those things? Making sure that that's aligned with their vision and their current structure. So I think a lot of restructuring and auditing is my short answer.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think, it's like someone listening to be like, okay, so it's just simple of like just kind of getting things organized. And it's like, I think the way that you explain it makes it sound so simple, but I think it's also because you do it all the time and you're helping businesses all the time doing this. And I think where a lot of people come to have us work with them on this is, I think sometimes it's like that saying, it's like you can't see the forest for the trees or whatever. And it's like they're just so in it that they can't even get themselves to come above the business to look at the business from up here, because they're just like, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed. And, it's like a lot of these business owners, they're working 50, 60, 70 plus hours a week, and they're burnt out, and they're like, I'm working in the business so hard every day. Now I need to take time to like also work on the business and figure these things out. Like it's overwhelming. But I think to what you're saying, it's like auditing what the heck is going on now. And then once we know what's going on, it's, asking the question of like, well, are we happy with the way that this is currently going between, the business owner and their team? And if not, it's like, well, what's going to be the plan? How do we address this? And I think to your point that you talked about on like the accountability chart, I feel like a recurring thing we hear all the time, whether it's with Skill with Pros clients or with like, the partner companies when we first come in, is everyone's doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We're a family here. We all kind of help out when needed. It's like, oh, we'll do some marketing and then we'll do some sales. And, that goes to the, our partners at The Perfect Clean when we first started working with them, and both of them would do some marketing, some sales, both would, help with operations. And it's like, we just help where it's needed. And it's like, okay, well, let's just like define like who's going to own what. And I think when people know what they're actually owning, it just creates so much more clarity of like what to focus on every day, because there's so much to do. And I think that's where a lot of business owners get stuck, is because there's so much to do that it's like, what do I even focus on? And they're running around playing the game of like whack-a-mole, just like trying to hit everything, get to the end of the day, and it's like, what did I even do today?
Yep. Yeah. And to your point, yes, we're simplifying it the way that we talk about it because we do it and it's like tried and true and we know it works because we've seen the difference at the end. But I think also a lot of business owners don't know where to start. And I think that's their biggest challenge, is they're like, I have no idea. So there is something that we do too. And you brought up the Perfect Clean example. I was thinking the Plant Guy example too, of Matthew being in production of his own creations and designs when he has a team of like 12 people doing production as well. Like, wait, Matthew, why are you back there, putting turf on your designs when you have a team that you pay for that? And he, is saying, I just don't think that they do it as good as me. So there also is that like, okay, let's identify what changes need to be made and where, and what's the biggest priority, like what's going to have the biggest impact and take the least amount of effort. And usually it's training your people, and just training them well, and then letting go.
Yeah, that's the key part, is the letting go. I mean, just getting a newer business up off the ground, like a business owner has to like, it's like blood, sweat, tears, fighting every day to just freaking survive. And it's like a certain amount of like, in that, kind of startup grow phase, is a little bit of like this like anal retentive control freak that you have to kind of have in the initial start to just get things going. But then it's like knowing when to start letting off of that to not continue in that, because then it's like that thing that helps you get going also is the thing that hurts you continue to actually scale, because it doesn't work anymore. It's like you have to have others being able to contribute. And I think, Matthew's a great example on that. And there's a great book that, for those listening, I always recommend. It's like a really quick, short read, but The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. It's a very simple concept in the book, but it's just like there's some helpful frameworks in there for like newer managers, newer leaders to let go, especially those that, to your point you were talking about earlier, is like they build a team, still doing part of their team's jobs in all these areas. And it's like, what the heck did you bring the team member on to do this? And then you're still doing the thing that they're supposed to be doing. But I think a lot of it's around the mindset. I don't like, obviously, as you know, I'm not like a big mindset guy, but I think just in general, it's like we have to get, people have to just think differently around it. And, the only way to do that is to work on the way that we think about it, and, reading books and things like that, or listening to podcasts like this to help break through that. So what else do you think about when, if you're thinking about companies that we're working with and like a recurring problem that comes up pretty regularly from like operations or strategy, and how do we help solve that?
I think a lot of times when companies have a lot of team members, they start losing the ability to communicate effectively. We hear all the time, yes, we have a weekly meeting, but there's not really like any productivity or action that comes out of it. I don't really know why we meet. I feel like we meet all the time. I feel like there's always communication issues when your team gets larger. So we dive in and implement our meeting system and structure, which is I think, really efficient when it comes to team management and communication because you're really focused and aligned on the same things. And it also ties into your annual strategy. So, what are your goals for the year? You never lose sight of your mission, vision, and the end game of the year because you're always focused on that in these meetings, in addition to what are the problems we want to solve that are happening today, or how can we get ahead of the stuff that we foresee happening tomorrow. So I really like that we spend a lot of time helping teams that need to communicate more effectively with these team meetings.
Why do you think what we do works versus like other people just like throwing their own meeting systems together? Like, what do you think like makes it different about like what we do with the meeting structures that we implement?
Sometimes having an outside perspective really helps. You don't realize how much your team squirrels, or you as a business owner squirrel. Like maybe you're the problem and your team can't tell you that. So having an outside influence, be like, all right, we've got to stay on track and get you on track every single time, like regimented drill sergeants, if you will. I think that really helps them realize and then gives them the ability to say, okay, team, hold me accountable next time. Be the enforcer for me. And then I think too, not just the business owner, but I think a lot of conversations just kind of happen organically in meetings where no one came prepared. So they're just going to bring up what's on their mind or feel like they have to talk just for the sake of like filling the space. So we eliminate that feeling and need, I think, too, with this structure.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's like, I'm not perfect by any means, but I heard this framework from a group that I was in is like purpose, agenda, outcome for like any meeting structure. And like, that's very much the, way that we attack that on the meeting structure. But anytime there's like, okay, we're going to just set up a meeting. It's like, what's the purpose of this? What is the agenda for what we're going to talk about? And what is the outcome that we're hoping for? And, just having clarity of like what the outcomes that we're looking for just really help make sure that things are efficiently being done, not just having a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. I think everyone's participated in meetings that it's like, what was the point of even, being in this meeting? Like, what did we even accomplish? And no one likes to feel that way. And so having the right amount of meetings so that things are moving forward, but not so many that it's just like, what are we doing here again? Like, why are we taking everyone's time away from the projects and the clients and everything again?
Yep, exactly. And the habit of doing it at the same time every week or with the same people, I think really helps people get in the mindset too of like, okay, it's Tuesday morning. I'm going to start my day off not feeling productive, but hopefully I leave this meeting feeling like I have some action items for the rest of the week to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the businesses that we work with, again, like they're wanting to figure out how to work more on the business, and that's obviously a big part. Like they want their business to become more profitable, but they want to be able to get back some of the time, because I think most of the business owners that come to work with us, like they didn't start their business with like, I just want to work 80 hours a week every week for the rest of my life, even if I'm making good money. It's like they want to have that, I like work-life integration more than work-life balance, like kind of just like integrating in, all of the things within the calendar to make, life happen. But what else, would you say to someone that's like trying to get to working more on the business? That's probably like, probably maybe they're listening to it in the car and they are that person working 70 hours a week. Like, what advice would you give that person that's trying to transition to more working on the business and getting some of their time back?
I think you were spot on with mindset, changing your mindset, shifting your belief system. I think a lot of people think they know the answer or think they know that they're going to waste time by doing XYZ, but they've never actually tried it. So mindset, definitely remove all of your biases and just believe that if you commit to something, it will happen. Shifting that to more strategy instead of feeling overwhelmed, chaotic, disorganized, putting everything into like a structure, I think really, really helps. Yeah. If that makes sense. I know that sounds oversimplified, but if you're feeling overwhelmed about your missing calls, for example, maybe structure your calendar differently. Or if you feel like your workflow with your team is chaotic and they're not talking to each other, then kind of like eliminating some of the unnecessary pieces of your workflow or automating some things, especially when it comes to technology. There's some things that you just don't know. A lot of times too, it could just be ownership. Like maybe there's too many people doing things, or maybe there's no one accountable for it, so it's not getting done. It's a very broad answer,
Yeah.
but Hopefully
But
that
just thinking of
helps.
some things that they can do, it's like because that's where a lot of people want to get to more, right? And I had another question for you too. So like, how do you like? Because maybe someone's listening and they're trying to grow in their operational role, or maybe they're a business partner that like takes on more of the operations in the business. Like, how do you balance out like helping move things along, but then also like communicating? Because I think that one of like the things that, I mean, you have so many things that you're so talented at, but like you communicate so well and, kind of like, okay, if we need to like pump the brakes in an area or like how we can, change something, it's in a way where it's like not like a friction standpoint, but like you're able to address things in a way and like help me understand like maybe there's like a pain point in a certain area of the business or like someone struggling with something. It's just like a communication style thing. Like how can people like in operational roles, because a lot of times it's like, the operational roles are the ones that are like, stopping something from moving forward is like the stereotype that like visionary personalities like, they just want to, stop the growth and the progress because they want to make things perfect or this or that. But like, how do other people do more of that? Because I actually had someone ask that at the Dominican event that I was at a few weeks ago. They're like, how do you like get, how does Adriana like do that in a way to like communicate well, but not like creating friction within the communication?
Thank you for the compliment. I didn't even know I did that. So that's very nice to hear. I think what you're talking about is probably the way I present things.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, it's like the presentation of information.
What I've learned a long time ago is that not everybody speaks the same language. There's people that like to tell stories in order to get their point across, and there's people that like to hear just the results, the data. So kind of blending that into starting with the result, agreeing on that's what everybody wants, and then talking about the bite-sized pieces to get there, I think is usually how I present it. That's how we do our annual planning. That's how we do our quarterly project priority planning. So yeah, I think starting from the result so that everyone's on the same page and listening and then I think people can hear the feedback or the strategy change or the adjustments that need to be made.
Was there any books that you read or like courses or programs or anything that you went through that's like helped you become a great communicator and like, really strong, like emotionally intelligence with communications of different people or like knowing your audience? Like, is there any, like, how can someone else that's listening, like, how the heck do I get better at that?
I did take a leadership course from Harvard Business Online School. The teacher's name was Frances Frey, and I became a huge fangirl of her. She wrote a couple books on leadership and really, really hones in on like trust, being your authentic self, and earning your way through your knowledge. So I think she has a podcast that's pretty like digestible pieces of leadership
Yeah.
tidbits, and I think that's where I get a lot of my communication skills from, or style from, if you will.
So it goes back to just the development of leadership and just like continuing to pour in on that area to keep growing. And like that's obviously something we always focus on internally, is like we have to raise our leadership lids. We always just have to be in, figuring out how do we get better and how do we improve so we don't stunt our own growth, right? So Frances Frey, you said, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, awesome. We'll make sure that we'll get Sean to put that in the show notes so everyone can find it. Within what we do at Skill with Pros, like we have like our portfolio companies where we actually are buying into them or some sort of equity deal with them and helping them grow. And then we have our Skill with Pros, like our consulting clients where we're coming in and helping them, actually, fix their problems in their business. So what would you say to someone that's like, is this like maybe the right time to work with the Scale with Pros team to like have them help in my business? Or like, my operations are such a mess right now, like I don't know if I'm ready yet, or I have all these problems, so I don't know if I'm ready to work with the team. Like, what would you say to that person? And like what the, I guess, would we call a ready to work with our team type person is, or company?
I think if you have a lot of problems, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. That's for sure. But you don't have to have a lot of problems to work with us either. I think that anyone that's feeling like I need some time back in my schedule to work on my business, I think that's like reason number one that you'd want to sign up for us, because we can help immediately address that issue. If they're feeling like their team is structured wrong. They don't have the right people in the right seats. I know that sounds like an HR problem, but I truly believe that it's an operational problem too. So I think that that's a huge pain point that, if somebody's feeling, that's something that they'd want to bring to the table for us. And then the disorganization, like if they're feeling chaotic or they don't even know, they know they're bringing in money, but they don't know what they're spending their money on, or they don't know how they're bringing in the money, like things like that. Those are feelings. I think that if you're having them, you should absolutely work with us to get organized and just more strategic.
It's really the people that are like, you're coachable, like you're teachable, like, you want to learn, you want to grow, you want to make positive changes in your business. It really makes sense to work with us. So it's interesting because, I have heard that some people are like, I'm not ready for you guys yet. And I'm like, wait, ready is like, you have the problems. That means you are ready because you haven't been able to solve those problems. And I think the biggest thing too is like people coming to work with us, like they can figure out these things on their own, but it's a matter of how much time do they want to take to figure it out. It's like, I look at like what we do is like, we're like the Disneyland Fast Pass. It's like, you could still go on the ride. You could still go on Splash Mountain, but like you might have to wait 4 hours, and like we're going to have the Fast Pass and we're going to have already went on the ride 3 times because we didn't, go the slower route. I think business owners, when they're considering just getting help in general for their business, it's like you're trading money for speed and your time back. It's like, do you want to have the problem you have right now for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? How long do you want to suffer for is really the question that you have to ask yourself. And, if you want to have a problem solved within the first, few months, it's, you find the who to help you solve it. That's one of my favorite books is like the who, not how. And I have to get myself into that sometimes where I'm like, I start doing something. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like I need to just find a who to help me. Cause oftentimes, people can think to themselves like, oh, I can do this and figure it out. But it's like, well, you can, but is that highest and best use of your time to figure that thing out? And it's funny because there's business owners, they're like, oh, like it's an investment to work with us or other, companies like coaches, consultants, agencies, masterminds, workshops, like those are all investments, but it's like you're buying time. How soon and how important is it to solve a problem? And to your point of getting 10 to 20 hours a week back, I was listening to this podcast. Is actually Russell Brunson, and he was talking about some like just busy business owners that don't have any time. And he was going into, he's like, you do have to trade, money for this investment. And that is a trade. But I guess how many more times do you want to tell your daughter you can't go to her soccer game because you're at the office because you didn't fix your business? How many times is that okay before you don't want to say that anymore? And it's like, oh, like I don't have kids yet, but it's like, that's deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it could be even your partner. Like you have to tell them, no, like I can't have dinner too many times that it gets old.
Yeah. It's like how many times does your partner in life, hear that from you? And, how many times for the kids, or how many times you put out like your parents and like, spending that family time or the hobbies that you told yourself that are important to you that, 3 years has went by and you haven't done that thing that you love to do. It's like tangible things where it's like, yeah, but it's like, that's really like, that's the whole thing of, you have a business that can be successful and, can be a great place for your team to work. But also it's like, can you do the things that are important to you in your personal life? And I think that's the solution that we actually provide at Skill with Pros, is like allowing people to have a business set up in a way where it's like, hey, you don't have to say no to your kid's thing or your, significant other dinner plan or, Saturday function that you wanted to do because you're catching up on Saturday on invoices and this and that because you're too freaking knucklehead, hard-headed to hire a bookkeeper to do it for you. It's like, that's like the actual, solution is like getting that time back.
And spending it in your business to be innovative and scaling it in a new level that you want to achieve that you're not capable of right now. I do want to go back to your point though of taking the time to do it yourself. I think the best thing about our team is that we've done the research, we've read all the books, we've listened to all the podcasts, we've attended all the, seminars that are available to develop the processes we did. And then we did the trial and error. We tested them in our companies. we don't do the exact EOS system because we saw what worked best for our companies, and now we just rinse and repeat, copy and paste those into the other businesses because that's what we use and that's what we know really works. So you could take the time to read Traction, which is a heavy book.
That book is terrible. Anyone that and let me rephrase, that's not terrible. It's just like, have fun taking that and then implementing it. I literally don't know if I've ever met someone that's like, yeah, I read that book and I implemented everything from Traction. Like, I don't know anyone that's actually done that. It's usually like, yeah, I read like 2 chapters and gave up, and it was too much.
Yeah. Or, I hired somebody from the EOS. They spend a ton of money on the EOS system and then they just end up not liking it. I think that's a good example of how much time goes into implementing a change in your business when you're just told, like, here's what works, here's how to do it. And not only like how, but like, let me do it for you for a little bit so that you actually see the ease and the outcome, I think really, really helps.
Yeah. It's like we've like figured out a lot of those things that work. And like, I think that's the reason why, people go to a personal trainer is they're like, I'm not figuring this out on my own. I've been trying to for a while. And it's like, well, how long in the personal trainer scenario, like, are you okay, like having a jacked up diet and like hormones being off or like these things, not being where you want them to be? And it's like, well, you can keep trying on your own. And it's like, yeah, you could read books about it. You can, watch YouTube videos about it. But like that help of having someone like guide you along of like, hey, like this is how you should do it. Let me show you. And I'm here for you to help you through it. And it's in those days where it's like frustrated and stuck. And it's like, hey, like, we can still guide you through that. And I think that's the difference maker. I think just in results in general on anything, whether it's health or business, finance, or anything like that. So as we're coming up on, last couple minutes here, Adriana, whether, business owner or someone on a team that's working and, trying to grow, anything that you'd recommend to just, help people grow in their like personal development journey, just become a better leader. Obviously I know you recommended, Frances Frey from, her podcast and books, but anything else that you'd recommend to those listening?
I think any developmental skill that you want to work on is going to help you grow. I think that's an obvious answer. But as a leader, if you lead by example and do that for yourself, I think that's going to show your team and encourage your team to do the same for them. So I'd say that's like lead by example is my answer.
It's like it's being out there and just kind of like moving the needle forward yourself, not being, it's like having people follow through your actions versus like telling them what to do. It's like showing them what to do versus telling, right? So guys, as we're wrapping up here, you might be thinking about in your business, getting help, support, growing and scaling up your company. The companies we typically like working with, usually around that, I mentioned it earlier, around 500,000 to about 5 million a year in revenue. And, we really like to come in and help, without doing more marketing and sales. We like to help you, more operationalize your business to get more of your time back. Like Adriana said, 10 to 20 hours a week, plus increasing your profitability while building, an amazing team to help you continue to grow the business that you're growing. So if you're looking for help with that, what you can do is you can go in the description below, click the link, learn about what it looks like, and, book a call with our team and, kind of tailor, to Adriana's comment earlier, we tailor the solution to you and your business so that you're able to get the result that you're looking for when working with us. So Adriana, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me. Excited to see some new people join the program.
Awesome. Alrighty, everyone. Well, with that being said, again, if you need help with your business, again, go ahead, click the link below, book a call with our team. And if you got any value from this episode, as always, make sure to like and leave us a review. So see you guys in the next episode.